Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We have a full crew here, and we'll chat around for about 45 minutes. Jan, I know that Jan has got to leave it a little early, but we'll bat around a few things, but we'll start as usual with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
All right, this one's going to be a little unusual. I just saw a picture. They have found a Peruvian mummy of an alien, so they say, right? And so, you look at this thing and you can go on Twitter and find it. It looks like E.T.
Well, remember, there was a report of this about a couple months ago about some alien bodies found in South America. So
right. So I finally saw a picture of it, and it looks like E.T. Like it does. It's like it's for all we know, this is like a paper mache hoax. So I just have to say, A, I do not believe. B, if you do believe, I wouldn't believe in this. It looks ridiculous, but I did get a laugh out of it because I'm getting up there in age, and for my whole life, people have been trying to show off pictures of Bigfoot and aliens and everything else, and there are none.
So
nothing's clear. There's no good pictures of any of these things.
So does it have Gordon Gekko's phone from Wall Street?
No, it's got like 3 fingers, and it just looks like E.T. That's all. It's like greenish complexion. It's little. It's just dumb looking, really. That's it. That's
so. I don't know, Peter or Jan, I don't know if you have any comments on extraterrestrials. I'm skeptical, but I was born skeptical, so I don't know.
Look, ask yourself this: if you were an extraterrestrial and you had all the technology in the world, in the universe, to get and find Earth, would you want to hang out and actually interact with us?
No,
no. Like, they're smart enough to go, this place is a hot mess. Like, next planet of whatever. Like,
He's been on the Earth Marketing Committee to get the aliens to come here.
Exactly. We got to market ourselves better. Well said, Jan.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking
wearing a jet hat, that's going to scare him off. Anyway.
Well, Russ, you could send him the ours. You could send him the picture of the hoodie that the guy I ran into. I forgot what did it say? What did it say, Russ?
Oh, JETS. It's something. I forget it now. I've seen it around though.
Yeah. It basically it's just a statement
about pain.
Yeah, it's definitely about pain. But speaking of marketing, and I realize that I should be just thankful that I can watch the games that I need to watch via ESPN Plus, like we did on Game Center or whatever. But it's annoying when you see the same commercials over and over. And just for shits and giggles, yesterday, because the first 2 periods of the Columbus-Toronto game was a complete abomination, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there is the same Nissan commercial that runs, and I now I understand the pattern. For some reason, the ad buy for Nissan was for the first 2 periods of every game. I don't know if that's ESPN Plus or just Toronto games or whatever. But it's a commercial where they're all racing in the desert, and one of them is Brie Larson, Captain Marvel, and they're all talking about, like, here's the electric car and here's this and that. Okay. Take a guess, plus or minus, how many times in the span of 40 minutes of hockey, and we know 2 TV timeouts in the periods, and then 2 breaks during the intermissions. How many times this commercial ran? Take a guess.
I'll say 13.
Jan?
I was going to say 12, but I'll go 10.
Peter?
I'm going to go under Jan, 9.
Jan got it right on target. 10.
Wow.
10 mother bleeping times. And it's gotten to the point now where I hear boom, 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 which is the lyric of the song that they're, I think it's like the song from the Blues Brothers, I can't remember the blues artist, but I hit the mute and I put my phone up and I'm doing something on my phone just to prevent myself from seeing this friggin' commercial because I want to throw something at the TV every time I see it. And it's 10 MFing times.
What if it's only being shown at your house and nowhere else?
I'm not that paranoid, Russ. I'm not that conspiratorial minded. Yes,
okay.
they're pumping it. They're pumping. Well, I'll just tell you this. It will prevent me from ever buying a Nissan ever. I will never. There are a series of commercials that the product that they advertise, I will never ever buy. These advertising agencies, I'm the wrong target audience because they think that the commercial's annoying and that people just.
I mean, McDonald's gets shown a lot. You still buy McDonald's?
Not anymore. I'm done.
Not anymore. You were such a
no.
liar.
I haven't eaten.
You have completely lied now.
I haven't eaten McDonald's in months.
No, that's bullshit.
No.
Total bullshit. Forget it, folks.
Don't believe. Okay. All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December 15th, 2023.
I'm Jan Levine, and Michael Jello is railing at the moon again.
I'm Pete Tessier, and I'm just happy to watch this in action with Mike.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Mayor McCheese. Oh, excuse me. I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, since we have Peter here, and I want to start out with this and then go to Jan because Jan, his time is limited today. Peter, the Winnipeg Jets, they've been doing pretty well, but the injury to Kyle Connor, 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury, or knee-on-knee hit from Ryan Strome. I didn't think
still playing Ryan Strome.
Yes, and I don't know. First of all, did you think it was purposeful? Did you think he did it on purpose?
It was purposely accidentally purposeful is what it was. And look, I think, Mike, to the point to this is, it doesn't matter that it was Kyle Connor. It doesn't matter. We have seen this kind of accidentally on purpose kind of hit happen so many times. And I can't remember of the judge in the United States who made the famous claim about pornography in the 60s. I can't tell you what it is, but I know what it is when I see it.
Yeah.
I can't tell you that was deliberate, but I can tell you it sure as heck wasn't an accident. Right. And that's the gray area it falls into. And the fact is, no player wants to get hit that way.
Right.
And there's too many players who are cavalier about that variable when it comes to allowing that hit to happen. And that's the problem, right? And that's where it's accidentally on purpose. Like, yeah, you wanted to hit him. I would too. But you didn't abort the mission when you couldn't hit him clean.
True.
And I think, again, I haven't watched it for a couple of days now, but I think there was time to do that. And that's the part where I would come back to the suspension of is, did the player have time to let up, avoid, and not try to hope he could get a piece of Connor by taking the risk of then taking out the ankle? And you can swap anyone else out for it. But now, and obviously, having covered the Jets for a long time, I'm not going homer on this, but people want to see the Kyle Connors. He was on a tear for goals. Mm-hmm. He was, they want to see the Kyle Connors. Strome's not selling any more tickets when he comes to town, unless he shows up in Winnipeg, right? And then everyone's going to want to come and boo him. And that's the problem with hockey. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, and it always comes back to it when you see things like this, that the justice system it can't be eye for an eye, or it can't be equivalence, but it's got to do something that is deterrent. And there's no deterrent right now.
Yeah.
I mean, players, you could ask them about it all the time. They all know this is a risk in the game, and they don't seem to get upset when it happens, because whether it happens to a star or another player, it's always happening. Mm-hmm. So it's like players are like immune to it. And at this point, they're like numb to it. They're used to it.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Jan, the justice is inconsistent. We can talk about what happened just recently with, the Goodbranson and Cousins, and Goodbranson gets a game. And I think everybody, I don't know. I think like everybody thought, well, Goodbranson had a right to go after Cousins because Cousins sort of, did him dirty along the boards. And this was comeuppance and he only got a game. Whereas Perron attacked the wrong guy and he got 6 games. So, I mean, I don't know. It just seems to be inconsistent from the Department of Player Safety.
Well, again, that's part of the problem, right? So, as I've said before, and you'll see me probably tweet from now till kingdom come, the Department of Player Safety is an oxymoron, right? I mean, they clearly don't do a good enough job of protecting. It's the inconsistency of the calls. It's the inconsistency of the penalties that are laid down, which A, sends a mixed message to the league, but B, also doesn't prevent instances like what happened to Connor or what happened to Goodbranson or others from occurring. I mean, look, Perron went after the wrong guy. He was protecting his guy because Larkin got absolutely leveled on a dirty hit that wasn't even penalized at all, right? Mm-hmm. Goodbranson felt that Cousins took advantage of him, and the fact that it was reduced to a minor and not a major was embarrassing on the ice to begin with. And you look, the argument that, well, Strome had planted his leg first and then he made contact and therefore he wasn't aiming for the knee is ridiculous because the only contact he could make based upon the way his leg was leg to leg, creating the injury. And Pete, I'll disagree with you a little bit. I don't care irrespective of who, if you're protecting your stars, I get it. I wouldn't care if you did that hit to a 4th line guy, right? It shouldn't matter who is the one who's being contacted. The call should be consistent and the penalty should be consistent, irrespective of the player. You want to argue that you should amp it and ratchet up the penalty based upon the level of player that's hit and the absence that player has, 100% on board. But, even before Paros took over, the guy who was running it before him, I forgot his name, was doing just as bad of a job. And I think it was Matthew Schneider, right? We had arguments then.
No, Stefan Kittel.
Right, Kittel, right. So sorry, Kittel, right. The arguments we had then are the same arguments we're having now. Nothing has improved. You have the same type of injuries and the hits that are ongoing right now all the time. And unfortunately, until they get a way to kind of fix it, and until they get a way to kind of make sure we get the calls right, you're not going to see any cessation of these type of hits happening. You're going to have the same kind of questioning, even if we get the videos and explanation, because none of it makes sense.
Well, the funny thing is that the appeals process when it comes to these suspensions is an absolute joke because that Gary Bettman is not going to undercut George Peros. He didn't do it with McAvoy. He didn't do it with Rasmus Anderson. He's not going to do, although I think with 6 games it has to go to an independent arbitrator, but I still don't think that they're, if anything, they may lower it by a game, but
right.
What is that?
Be a game.
What does that matter? So, I don't know if you guys remember, and I remember it not fondly for Mike Modano, but if you remember when Mike Modano got injured and he was taken off the ice, I can't remember what he was with Dallas, obviously, because he only played 1 year in Detroit, and he gets taken off the ice on a stretcher, and the stretcher falls.
Yeah, I think it was against the Rangers that happened, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because Sam Rosen was. Sam Rosen was doing the play-by-play. He's like, "Oh my goodness, yeah." Well, okay, that's the closest thing I can think to what I just read. This report from Frank Cervelli. I can't believe this. Honestly, the PA and the NHL is investigating. Apparently, Juuso Valimaki, former Calgary first-round pick, now with the Coyotes, playing in a game against Dallas, got cut during the game, and according to the report, they're saying they're investigating a gap in protocol. And I know, like, from being at Sabres games, they have medical teams, they have an ambulance waiting for something happening on the ice, and immediately the player is supposed to be taken immediately to a hospital, just like DeMar Hamlin in Cincinnati last year. Well, according to this, there was a gap in protocol. Valimaki was taken to the hospital and lingered without care for hours in a Dallas hospital after a severe facial injury that ultimately required 55 stitches to stop the internal bleeding. Now, I don't know where the NHL and the NHLPA's reach ends here, but because, I know people that have gone to the emergency room with cuts, and normally they wait for hours, and depending on the severity, I don't know if there's Russ, I don't know if there's like a a fast forward line? Or
There's not. I'm going to give you a story. I went to a place. There was this. You always think when you're a kid, sometimes you over exaggerate about a place and you don't like it. And so I was visiting my cousins. I went back to Long Island, and I was going up the stairs, actually coming down their stairs, and I slipped, and there was no light or anything. And so when I caught my fall, I braced myself. I put my hand first, so I didn't face plant or anything. But there was broken concrete, and the concrete went right through my hand, right? So they had to bring me to the emergency room, one that I used to hate, and said, don't bring me to that one. Even then I was saying it because they stink, right? But again, this happens everywhere. So I go there, and we're waiting. It's over an hour. My hand is shaking. They finally look at me, and they say, all right, listen, you could wait over there, or you could clean out your own cut. Like, go over to the sink, and I did, and I poured the stuff on. I could see through my hand at that point, and I did it because I figured it's got to be better than just sitting here with it shaking. But my point is, they do it on a who's worst basis,
right?
And I don't think the NHL gets any kind of break on that, because these days hospitals are just they're too overworked. So I don't think there's anything the NHL can do. If somebody has a bad face and there's 5 other people that are worse off, somebody's in a life-saving condition, somebody's got to get heart surgery, somebody's got guess what? They're doing those first.
Right.
But again, it gets, as somebody who you guys know, unfortunately, have been in way too many hospitals this year, right? It all gets back to the same thing in anything in life, right? It's communication, right?
Yes.
You know what? Say, look, I know you came in, I know you have X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, we've had X, Y, and Z case associated with you. You're going to have to wait, right? All it gets back is, and it's the lack of communication, because I can tell you myself has been there. You don't get any communication. I can understand. Look, they're overwhelmed, they're understaffed,
yes,
right? But all in general, like anything in life, right? It gets back to communication. If you could come back and somebody said to him, look, I understand you're in with this cut, but we've had these cases come in, you're X, Y, Z in line based upon no additional changes, nothing would have been said.
Probably.
Yeah, Peter, do you have anything to add on that one?
No.
Okay.
But I do want to add this.
Yeah.
Was Frank's article saying that the NHL should get preferential treatment here?
No. He's just they're investigating because there is a process in place. I mean, obviously.
What do you mean a process? Like, I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, there is supposed to be they have an ambulance on call. They have that the player is immediately whisked away, depending on, and I mean, I would assume, for example, like in Buffalo, I'm assuming I'm pretty sure that the hospital that is on call for anything that happened during a Sabres game would be ECMC, Erie County Medical Center, which is, a 5 to 7 minute drive from the arena. I mean, if depending on if it's something emergent, meaning like life threatening, like Richard Zednick or Clint.
Yeah, then they're going to take it right away. But see, when I didn't read it, but when I'm hearing something like that, it almost sounds as if you're saying like, hey, that NHL player should get handled quickly or first. And we're at a point where that just doesn't work anymore.
I think this is something that's really interesting. You guys are saying it from an American standpoint, right? And when you look at it, it's not what's a better system or whatever. That's a totally different conversation. But this is something that's often said in Canada because of the way the healthcare system works up here. People think there's a perception that everyone's treated the same. Now, there's some interesting things. And sometimes, at least in Winnipeg, when someone's found out that, I have to wait 2 weeks to get my MRI, and XYZ player went in there the next day after the game, how do they get it? There's a real lack of understanding. So to the point that we're talking about here is sometimes hospitals have situations where it is out of control and they have to triage because they don't have the resources to do everything. So they have to make a decision. Okay, this guy's going to have to wait because the surgeon who may look at him, he's tied up right now. We don't have another one. And it's natural triaging. And should he get preferential treatment?
Well,
That's a totally different discussion.
I found the article. Let me read it because it's important context, right?
Go ahead.
Sources told Daily Faceoff that Valimaki was dropped off in the emergency room like any other patient and left to advocate for his own care with his wife, who happened to be in Dallas at the road game, and a Coyotes team employee. After initial observation, the overworked Dallas hospital staff told Valimaki to find a local hotel and come back in the morning, that their attention was turned to more critical incoming trauma patients such as gunshot wounds. But Valimaki was in need of immediate care. With his face bloodied, a hole in his mouth, and significant internal bleeding, Valimaki was unable to function, sources said. Doctors later told Valimaki that he had returned to a hotel and slept it off as directed by the hospital. There was a chance he could have asphyxiated on his own blood. It wasn't until 5 hours later, and after the NHLPA stepped in to assist, that Valimaki received 55 stitches in his mouth to close the wound, which included a fractured bone and the loss of 3 teeth.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. So it's a bad answer that Dallas Hospital originally gave, but I don't see what the investigation is going to do.
So the investigation is he shouldn't have been left on his own devices with his wife. There should have been a team representative or the team doctor there to advocate.
Well, that's the whole thing.
That's what seems to be the investigation partially is centered
on.
Okay,
but here's what Pete said. Let's say all ERs are taken, or every room is taken. Yeah. There's nothing the team doctor can do. He's going to have
oral surgeon's a specialist. Right. What if the oral surgeon on call was tied up because someone got shot in the mouth?
And the team doctor does not have privileges in those hospitals.
No, they just can do stuff.
Again, I don't know what they're going to do here because honestly, the hospital gave bad advice.
They did.
But you know what? That's unfortunately any bad advice that somebody else may just get, right? I don't know.
The only way around this is if you have your own NHL hospital, and if something happens, you can bring him there. But otherwise, there's no way around this. Or you have somebody on call that's at a place like a patient first place that can do small things like this, and you could avoid a major hospital, but that's going to cost a lot more. Yeah. So it's I don't see a way around this. I don't think it was right. Of course, it was wrong, but this could have happened to any one of us. And guess what? We would have very little recourse.
Now, a couple things in the Toronto-Columbus game besides the actual game. Patrick Laine gets tripped up, and I was watching it in real time. It wasn't I don't think it was a slew foot. It was just there was a puck battle with William Lagesson, the Leaf defenseman. He went down to the ice. He slid into the boards, and that's when he grabbed at his shoulder, and he left the ice, never came back to the game, and then it's announced today he's out 6 weeks with a broken clavicle. So it goes the luck goes from bad to worse for Columbus. And Laine, I mean, honestly, Peter, because of his history in Winnipeg, it started off great. He looked like he was going to be a superstar, and then it's just things have just, I mean, the bad luck and the bad fits when it comes to places he's played have just it just has not worked out for him.
You sort of have to wonder right now if he looks at Winnipeg and goes, man, would I like to be in that place? Right. Given new coach, change in leadership, and a fairly, diverse roster. And, obviously he couldn't have been there with the roster it is now because he was a huge part of how it came to shape by him leaving. But
one sec, Pete, there's breaking news with Columbus. You want to talk about bad news? Brian Hedger reports their assistant Steve McCarthy got hit by a puck today at practice. It's just it's just unbelievable.
It's sometimes look, you can have curses on teams essentially of bad luck. Jan's wearing a Jets hat. I mean, it's and I'm not saying that to rub it in. I'm saying that's just how it goes.
No, of course not.
No. Hey, you're in Buffalo, Mike.
Just, just mix in a little bit, get it marinated a little bit.
Toronto.
I say that, yeah. But I say that in the sense only because this is Columbus's lot in life this year. It's just going to be that kind of year. It's like a relationship. Sometimes you have good years, sometimes you have bad years with your spouse, and you just move on to the next one and just persevere. Sure. It sucks for Laine. I mean,
by the way, 2023. it could die now, and I'd be fine with it.
Yeah,
It could
right.
go away.
Like
Works for me.
John, this hasn't been a great year.
No.
And you think about Laine, you have to wonder, do you look back in the rearview mirror and you go, how did I arrive at this point? And what got me here? Is anyone helping him do that reflection? Because he still has the opportunity to change this around.
I think you bring up a good point. I don't know if he's that kind of guy. I get the feeling like he's a little headstrong still.
Yeah.
And in this, what I would call the strangest injury that I've seen this year, former Ranger and current Maple Leaf Ryan Reeves, in a speed wobble, hits into the boards by himself.
I saw that.
Seemed to injure his left ankle. It was almost like a high ankle sprain type of thing. He hit the boards with the toe of his skate, and then couldn't stay up on his skates. And then, to make matters worse, and I've walked down this hallway. He walks from the hallway from the bench going to the Leafs locker room and appears to fall and collapse in the. So like I don't know. I can't remember if there's stairs going down because it's been a little bit of time. But I mean, of course, the Leafs are on. They're a day off in terms of media, so we won't know the extent of the injury.
It's awful though.
But yeah, no, I mean it's of course there were some idiot.
One column wrote that he hit a rut on the ice. That's what I saw in one column, that he hit.
Okay.
A
That's
rut,
what it looked like. But he couldn't stop.
Right.
Like,
B, he couldn't
stop though. It was weird.
He was helped off the ice, then helped down the tunnel, and the two guys who helped him left him, and then he fell. He fell down. Right. So the question is, why did they leave him if they knew he was having a hard time walking?
Yeah,
that makes no sense. I don't know.
Of course, the guy in the chat with the Montreal Canadiens emblem here is like saying the Leafs wanted Reeves to be put on LTIR to open up caps. I'm banning you forever from the chat. There you go. You're banned. Sorry about that. Okay, so those two things being bizarre. The most bizarre thing was the fact that the Maple Leafs that beat the Rangers, that, I was expecting the Rangers to beat them badly because they were riddled with the flu. They were playing 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. They were playing Martin Jones and go, oh no, they win 7-2 against one of the best teams in hockey. Okay, they come back against one of the worst teams in hockey, and after 2 periods, they're down 5-0. Ilya Samsonov can't stop a beach ball. But they keep him in goal, and then they come back from 5-0 to tie it 5-5. And apparently, the Columbus Blue Jackets are the first team in NHL history to blow a 5-goal third-period lead and then win the game.
Right, but they have a history. So, like Brian Hedger, when it was 5-0, said, "If they blow this lead, we riot." Right, and they did. And he actually, but here's the thing. But he did post later, and he does good work. They've now blown leads in 19 of their 31 games, and they've blown 23 leads in those 19 games, including 2 separate leads against Minnesota, Anaheim, the Rangers, and Montreal. So they're a team now that is known for blowing leads, maybe not of the 5-goal variety, but of others.
But here, okay, of course, I'm looking at it from the Toronto perspective here.
Of course you.
Of course, because I cover the team, and I've covered the team for 15 years. How can this team get down to a team as crappy as Columbus, down 5-0?
The goaltending's not very good. That's how.
It's called the NHL. It's
I wrote my blog.
Yeah, Mike, in fairness, though, I didn't see the game last night. It was at a holiday event. And it wasn't on, so I was checking stuff this morning when I got up, and I saw the score, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." I heard about the Laine injury. I looked at the box score, I'm like, "What the heck happened?" So, I mean, so to your point, if being a non-observer, you're like, given what's going on in Toronto and all the time, is how does this happen? So, I think you've got a point there. How do you get down 5? Right, and I'm starting to wonder, do you think Treliving, even though the Leafs are doing okay, do you think Treliving's got his trigger finger?
Well,
Ready?
okay. Well,
The issues you
for-
pointed out with their defense and their goaltending came to roost yesterday. Very simple.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but okay, here
It didn't
here
happen
were
against the Rangers. It happened against Columbus. I mean,
But
It's hockey.
here were well, no, but here were the excuses. It was the third game in 4 nights. The room is riddled with the flu. It's the trap game. You know, they played the Rangers. They're playing Pittsburgh on Saturday, so it's the game everybody thinks is in the middle. That's the easy one. Okay, all we've heard these excuses before, but all those are shot down by the fact that they came back and tied the game. Because if they were beaten because they played 3 games in 4 nights, if there was flu ravaging the room, if it was a trap game, then they wouldn't have come back. Then they would have lost 8-2. But they came back and tied the game.
Well,
they
I
came
mean,
back in
even
the
the
third.
worst teams get some goaltending, even in a game that they give up 5 goals. I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it's just these are 2 weaknesses that could pop up any time for the Leafs against anybody.
Well, I mean, okay, they're without two of their defensemen. Right now they're playing 2 AHL guys in Simon Benoit and William Lagesson. They've been playing them. They've been overloading minutes on Riley and Brody and those guys. They played bad defensively yesterday, as they tend to do sometimes. And Ilya Samsonov has played 3 good games all year. He has not been the same goalie that he was last year. That Joseph Wall had stolen the job, and then Joseph Wall got hurt, and now they have to rely on Martin Jones and Ilya Samsonov. And by some miracle, they've gotten a point in every game since November the 8th. But it's just I don't know. It's just absolutely bizarre. I mean, okay. But there's a history with this team. They lose to these bad teams. They've lost to Chicago twice. They've lost to Ottawa, Columbus, and Buffalo. They always lose to the crappiest teams in the league. And that drives fans nuts. It really does. But anyway, so a couple things here. Peter, I wanted to mention the whole ceremony in Vancouver for Roberto Luongo yesterday.
Yeah.
They don't retire the numbers in Vancouver. They just honor. They have a ring.
Yeah, that's the Wall of Honor, the Ring of Honor.
Yes.
And they put him up there. So it's
a cop-out.
It's a cop-out.
I mean, at least finally Toronto came around to it and okay, well, let's retire Dave Keon's 14 and Wendell Clark's 17, and nobody can ever work those numbers again. And for a while, when Paul Higgins and John Kordick is wearing Frank Mahovlich and Daryl Sittler's 27, I would have a problem. I had a problem with it. I'm sorry. So
yeah. I mean, I think I don't understand. Look, we have seen some rare situations where teams have too many. Like the New York Yankees have too many. They've been around forever and they've had a lot of great players. It does happen sometimes, but the whole Ring of Honor thing, I don't like when you don't have to operate it that way, when you have a choice of a lot of numbers. And Vancouver, that was just a cop-out. Luongo deserved better. He just did.
Yeah. But, I got to give Luongo huge props. At the end of his speech, free the skate.
Yeah.
He played his card. He's team skate. And right now, if you follow Vancouver a lot, they're going through a lot of uniform I wouldn't call it strife, but opinions about what the future should be for that. And there's a big, big momentum to bring back the flying skate.
I didn't understand what he was saying, but now that you explain it, I like the rink with the stick. I always have. I like, but I like the skate better than I like the court jester, the big flying V.
I like the skate one because Pavel Bori wore that one, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's why I like
V was Brodeur, I think. Richard Brodeur wore that one.
Yeah, he was Brodeur, King Richard.
Thomas.
I'm with Luongo on this.
Yeah. It's, the problem is I do like the stick in the rink. I like it. And I understand why those colors existed. Right. But the problem with Vancouver is they won't let go of a weird time in the history of the organization. Is that was with that Orca Bay, the sea with the thing. And they can't seem to just say that's going to the past. They got to keep it alive for some reason.
Maybe Sharky is the one that keeps it alive.
Well, I mean, hey, in Buffalo, for some reason, they continue to go back to the decapitated goat's head. They go back to the red, black, and white because that's when they last got to a Stanley Cup wearing that jersey. And
I'm sorry, and it's not Sharky, it's Finn. I met Finn.
Yeah, Finn.
Yeah, but no, if teams for some reason get attached to certain jerseys, maybe because those were that was when they had their glory days. But
there's no glory days for the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, 2011,
there's nothing.
Look,
there's zero.
There are some glory days. Like, you got to think about it. Like, if you said when were the last glory days for the Leafs, you go back to 93, 94.
Yep.
Right, they were getting to conference finals. They were they were competitive in there, and that's it. They had Doug Gilmour.
Wendell Clark, Dave
Anderson. Glory days for the Canucks are honestly, it's the early '90s when Burry was just unstoppable,
right?
And the run to '94,
right?
And then you got to look at what the peak Sedins. There's not a lot, but it was like you got to remember.
I get it.
The Canucks won back-to-back president's trophies, right?
That's a curse, though.
It's a curse, but that's the wrong way of measuring things, right? To say, well, you did that. That's a huge achievement to be that good that long in that competitive a league, like for any team.
The Bills. It's just like, I don't know. Here's how I look at it. You bring up the Jets hat. There are no real glory years for the Jets now. They haven't even been back to the Super Bowl since I was 5 years old. So are there moments where they're okay? Yeah, there are moments where they got close, and I guess you could call those glory years. But me when I look at something strictly as a fan, I hate grasping onto that. Not because I only want championships, but you feel lesser than if you do that. So hey. If Canucks fans want to grab onto that, that's up to them. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to grasp onto 4 losses in the Super Bowl.
Right, I get it. Like, I get it that they were great enough.
Vikings are the same.
Who else has done
right.
it, Mike? You got 4 straight trips to Super Bowl. Granted, the end result's not great, but nobody in history has ever done that.
I know, but it's 4 straight losses. It'd be one thing.
The totality of that one game to get to that game 4 years in a row is superhuman. Because it's so hard. If it was easy, you'd have the games would be totally different. And you see teams figuring out the formula to do it. It's not easy.
Look, I have it for the Rangers, 2012 to 2015, 2 Eastern Conference Finals and a Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah,
great run. Sucks that they lost, but pretty damn good run there for 4 or 5 years.
They were a great team. They're fun to watch. They had a coach who, was open to trying things and doing things. They just ran into an LA behemoth.
They did.
Well,
but
I can blame Vigneault for his defensive strategy that whole playoff, that whole finals.
Insanely lucky with a subpar goaltender, right? There's so many different things that have to happen. You look at, you go back, you can cite it in all sorts of ways. That is what makes sports incredible, is particularly in hockey, where one player can absolutely shut down a team.
Sure.
Look at Fleury in 2018.
Disagree.
Right?
But Jan's trying to tell Mike, hey, listen, what would you rather have, 1 gold medal or 4 bronzes? Mike
I'm not saying you wouldn't rather have the cup or the championship. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm not equating the two. But to say that the error in itself just is completely wiped off.
No.
Because you're doing it because you had 4 years in a row. That's something. It's not like something has been done historically. It's something that otherwise in football has never really been done.
Yes. Okay, I'll give you an example. I have a hat that I bought because it was really fun at the time, and it's a Jets win the AFC East hat, right, from 1998, and that is the last time they've done it.
Correct.
And if I wear that hat now, I wear it as a joke because I understand how ridiculous it is. If I should feel great about that, because it's the only goddamn time they won the division since that time. It's not it was a great year. It was a good year, but it's not something you should feel good about long term, I don't think.
Yeah, I have to break out my Buffalo Bills 4 AFC Championships T-shirt. Yeah,
right.
Okay. No, I don't. Okay, I don't know how to feel about this whole situation, but the Jordan Kyrou situation in St. Louis is, I mean, okay. Jordan Kyrou was asked after the firing of Craig Berube about, how to comment on it. And he says, I'm paraphrasing here. No comment. He's not my coach anymore. Basically, that's what he said. That was out there. And in the next game, at home, St. Louis played. He was lustily booed by the fans in St. Louis. Now, obviously, Craig Berube, even though they've underachieved this year and is let go, he is the coach that coached that team to their only Stanley Cup championship. So in spite of the fact that he's just been fired, he's going to have a place in the heart of Blues fans probably forever. So Kyrou was interviewed after the game and broke down in tears when he was talking to a member of the media. And like, my feeling is, I mean, I think Kyrou's like 23, 24 years old. I know he's being paid millions of dollars, and these athletes are supposed to be impenetrable and not take things personally. But, when you're supposedly a popular player and you're being well paid, and now all of a sudden the fans are booing you for nothing that you did on the ice, but just for something that you said flippantly after a coach was fired, I don't really know how to feel about that. What do you think?
I'll give you an example. Somebody I know, Terry Doyle, who covers junior hockey great. I see him every draft. Great guy. He said something that really hit with me, because I remember having a one-on-one with Kyrou, and it took him a little while. It took me a little while. And this is just an outside of the NHL event to kind of get him to warm up. And he said he's never been comfortable with the media, and he didn't, and a lot of times doesn't know exactly what to say. So he feels like there was no malice with the statement. I said last night when I saw the statement, I don't think it was flippant. I don't think that was the worst thing he could say either. Mm-hmm. Now, he could have said something better, but I do feel like he was trying to minimize it and try not to go down a bad road. I think he was trying to be classy. But again, I understand the Blues fans are mad, and they're mad because Berube got fired for no good reason, and you can't boo Armstrong because he's up in a box. So they're going to boo Kyrou, but I don't think it's right to do that. But they have the right to do whatever they want.
Well, Jan, I mean, apparently it was well known that Kyrou and Berube did not get along. Correct. So that's a contributing factor here. Not to say that he was responsible for getting him fired, but he didn't, and it wasn't like he was rubbing his hands with glee with the fact that Berube got fired. But it wasn't exactly like he had any kind of contrition for.
So a couple of things. So first of all, I mean, whether or not the comment was made flippant, I do think that the relationship between the two of them, or the lack thereof, played into the response for sure. I don't think it wasn't just an off the cuff type of response. B, the fan base, clearly, as you said, has still affinity for Berube, and they always will, because he led them to a cup, a team that was basically next to last when he took over in January that year, and got them all the way through to the cup final and a championship thanks to Jordan Binnington. So the fan base itself is going to take Berube's side to a certain extent. I kind of put this a little bit on the St. Louis PR department, right? Because after the comment came out, they had to have known that it probably wasn't well received, and they could have had a conversation with Kyrou, and B, they could have done steps or done something to basically minimize the comment by letting him issue a follow-up saying, I really didn't mean Craig any harm. He was whatever to do, spin it any way you want, but don't necessarily leave that as the comment out there when the coach just got fired and you're going to have a home game when the fans are likely going to react. So I think there's a lot of different parties culpable, but to say Kyrou is completely blameless, I think is also not necessarily 100% accurate, because the lack of the relationship clearly played into the way he responded. And granted, he may have just meant, look, he's no longer my coach, right? We need to move on and basically get behind the guy who's behind the bench now. And there's a way to say that. The way he did was kind of like cutting him off at the knees and dismissing him, which is what wasn't well received by the St. Louis fan base.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, Jan, I totally agree with you. Like, the situation is just odd. Like, coaches are hired to be fired. They have a shelf life. Like, who gets, like, the days of Al Arbor are gone, right? Like, someone being there longer than the Christmas cake in my basement. Like, it just doesn't, like, that's just not there. Like, the Barry Trotzes, like, it doesn't happen. They're unique. So I could understand attachment in those situations. But Berube is you're part of the cog to get wins, and you're expendable. And I think the St. Louis fan base needs to talk from Greg Popovich. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just whatever. So what? He's not my coach anymore. Said it wrong. But what do you want him to say? Like, he's not Mike Commodore, at least.
No, but part of it is playing the media game, right? As you know, Pete, right? It's look, I'm not saying he should soft soap it, right? You can, the lack of the relationship is well known, but you could very easily say, you know, he's no, right now we're moving on and we're focused on playing for the guy who's behind the bench now. And if he said that, nothing would have been said.
100%. You're right. He wasn't ready for that, how to answer that question. He was honest and blunt about it.
Which is fine.
Which is fine, but you know, I would expect some pushback on that with the way it came out. But I wouldn't expect booing the guy, like whatever. But that's me.
No, they've definitely taken sides. That's for sure, Pete, in St. Louis.
Yeah, that's true.
And along the lines, you know, because Berube was the third coach to be fired. Woodcroft in Edmonton and at Dean Evison in Minnesota. And I'm not going to go into the Minnesota stuff that we've been
too much Minnesota.
Yeah, it's not clear what exactly is going on there. So until we have some more clarity, I don't really want to comment on it. But in terms of the coaches being fired, now there's 3. And, you know, something, if you look at the landscape right now when it comes to coaches, other than DJ Smith, and I don't think Ottawa's going to fire him just yet because Ottawa's played only, I think it's 23 or 24 games. They got like 5 games in hand on almost the rest of the league. I don't see a clear path to anybody getting fired right now. Like in the West, you know, the only teams that are really out of it are Chicago, Anaheim, and San Jose, and all of them have new coaches or they're rebuilding teams. And in the East, I don't think Granado's getting fired. I don't think Sullivan or Lindy Ruff is getting fired. Smith might be the only one in danger, and Pascal Vincent's a first-year coach. So right now, I don't see like if in terms of like a betting line, I think they're all long shots. I don't see a clear path to somebody getting fired the rest of the year.
No, but I think somebody still might. I mean, besides DJ Smith, I still think
if there's a long losing streak, anybody can get fired. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, I told you I don't think Don Granado should be safe. Like, he's a good guy, great, but this team is just woefully underperforming, and they're no longer in a rebuild.
Right,
so
I agree with Henrik Lundqvist's comments, and maybe he should not be safe, but I think he is safe.
Okay, I mean, maybe, but I still think he's another one that's going to get focused on at some point, because if they keep losing, it's not going to be good.
Well, and this is the thing. We have seen it many a time where teams are in love with the players that they have. And at a certain point, they come to recognize and realize that something is going to need to change. And if the Sabres keep allowing 2 to 3 goals in the first period and playing from behind all the time, then they're going to realize that something's not kosher in Denmark, and that something needs to change. Now, when do they come to that realization? Well, they decided at the beginning of the year they wanted to go with a 21-year-old goaltender, and they didn't want to trade for a veteran goalie, and they didn't want to upgrade their defense. They like their players, and I get that. But
well, let's say it this way. I'm going to put it a different way, Mike, because you're in that market. We're talking about what a horrible, almost laughable, weird year it is for Columbus, and they're 1 point behind the Sabres.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I mean, how much worse could it get for the Sabres?
No, I mean,
I look at that,
Peter. I think the Sabres are the most disappointing team in the NHL this year, and the only reason I don't put them behind Ottawa is because Ottawa's got 5 games in hand over them. Buffalo they're 3 games under 500. They have not shown any ability in terms of improving defensively. They've regressed offensively, and their goaltending their goaltending might be worse. Maybe not worse than last year, but it's not great. So really, they haven't made any progress. And this was a team that was the chic pick to make the playoffs.
I picked it.
So did I. But right now, I mean, I think in the East at least, they're the
So
most disappointing.
are they fixable with a coaching change?
No. I think it's a thing of construction. Now, maybe when with Granato, maybe his message is wrong because he does promote a lot of compete, but he likes wide open offense.
Yeah, it's too much offense. I do think they could cut down on their mistakes, which they haven't been able to do.
They did stress defense from the beginning of training camp, but you can't say play defense, but play offense. It's
okay, let me ask you this question. And I'm not saying what he did was correct because it's not working. But is Tony Granato benching anybody like Pascal Vincent for not playing defense? Are they sending anybody down to the minors who was good like Kent Johnson because he wasn't playing defense? Have they done anything like that?
Okay. In terms of they didn't promote Kulik because I don't think they think he was ready.
Okay, but that doesn't count. Somebody on the team in the room.
Victor Olofsson. Victor Olofsson has been early in the season. He made a couple mistakes and he benched him. And now
so he's the one guy.
Right, he's the one guy. And last year, remember, he had 28 goals. He was third on the team and third or fourth on the team in scoring. And they benched him late in the year because I don't think he plays the game the way Granato wants players to play.
I mean, just to answer, go ahead, Pete.
Well, I was just going to say, I think one thing that changed, like look at the numbers. They're only 5 points out of a playoff spot for a wild card.
Right.
Here's the other thing, though. They aren't even getting league average goaltending across their three goalies. You get them between the three goalies, Lucan and Levi and Comrie, to 9-0-10 or 9-10.
Yep.
You probably got your 5 points in there.
Right, but look at the standings and look who's between.
Oh yeah, it only gets harder, right?
Yeah, between the wild card, who is I think 31 points, and the Sabres who are at 25. You've got
27.
27. You've got New Jersey, who's better than them. You've got Tampa, who's better than them. You've got Pittsburgh, who's better than them. I mean, there's 4 teams that I think are better than them that are in between them and the playoff spot.
Not in it. The Sabres are no longer in it. Even though Pete says what he said is mathematically, factually correct, that they're only 6 points out. When you're 2 slots from the bottom and you're 6 points out, you're nowhere in this league.
Yeah.
But it's because of the loser point that we can have this conversation and say, well, they're only this. But fans know better. Right. They know this team's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And
at least the way they're playing now, unless something changes. Now, if they don't change the coach, they are going to be a top 5 losing team this year, and they're going to get their draft pick, and then something probably will happen in the offseason because I can't believe that they would be okay with that.
Yeah. All right. Good show, guys. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for the departed Jan Levine, for Pete Tessier, and for Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Lagello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.